Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Mueller, it's good to see you.
Sir.
Welcome. Thank you for testifying. You and I have known each other a long time. A dozen years ago, you were my boss of the Department of Justice. Although let me say, any mistakes I may make, you will be fully held harmless.
You were clean, not to worry.
Well, and let me also echo the comments of colleagues of mine on both sides of the aisle, thanking you for your service and your integrity. You have spent many decades in public service focused on law enforcement. And indeed, I recall when we were working together at the Department of Justice, almost every day in the morning staff meeting, the question you would ask was essentially, are we locking up bad guys? And I appreciate that focus to protecting the innocent and to going after bad guys. And thank you for a lifetime of service.
Thank you, sir.
I want to talk about two topics that are both of significant importance. The first is the IRS, and I want to echo some of the concerns that Senator Sessions raised about the groups that we know or were targeted by the IRS that are reporting that they have yet to be contacted or interviewed by the FBI. As you know well, in any investigation that is in a highly politicized climate that involves potentially corruption and political interference from the White House, the investigation is a perilous endeavor and an endeavor of significant importance to the populace. And so I want to ask, what level of priority would you characterize the IRS investigation at the FBI?
I would say it's a high priority investigation in that it needs to be handled with care, but it also needs to be pushed aggressively because it's a very important case. As I think you're aware, we've worked together. I will pull no punches in terms of where that investigation would lead, and we would go down any path that would lead to evidence on individuals, organizations, or otherwise, and we're in the process of doing that. We have substantial, I think, numbers in terms of those who are working day in and day out on the investigation, both internally in the FBI, but also with support from the Department of Justice where we need legal process. Again, I'll have to get back to you in terms, and as I said to Senator Sessions, in terms of the pace and progress of the interviews, but I am aware of some of the ongoings in the investigation, and I do believe that we have moved it expeditiously during the period of time we've had it open, which is probably about a month now.
How many agents or other personnel have been assigned?
We have approximately 12 agents here in D.C. that are working on it, but also agents designated around the country because of the breadth of the investigation, who also will be working on it, depending on where the investigation takes us around the country.
And I wanted to ask additionally if the scope of the investigation includes looking into whether individuals have been politically targeted. I can tell you that we are hearing more and more anecdotal reports, not just of Tea Party groups or conservative groups that were delayed or targeted in C-4 applications, but donors who supported Governor Romney in the campaign, who supported Republicans, who found within weeks or months of their support becoming public, suddenly they were targeted for audits. Now, those are very difficult questions to answer if there's a pattern of doing so, because those audits are not generally public. But do you know if the scope has included whether there was targeting of individuals for political activity by the IRS?
Well, I think you can understand that because it is an ongoing investigation, I'm leery about delving into much more about what is happening in the course of the investigation. All I can do is I assure you, and you know me, we'll push it wherever it goes.
Well, I would certainly urge the FBI not to narrowly circumscribe the scope, because the last time there was an instance of an administration trying to use the IRS to target political enemies. It was the Nixon administration, and it led to grave consequences. And I think the FBI is well situated to pursue a serious, impartial, fair, and yet vigorous investigation of whatever the scope of conduct and illegal conduct may have been.
Okay.
I want to talk about a second topic briefly, which is that I am concerned that this administration's priorities in the war on terror have been misallocated. That on the one hand, the administration has been less than vigorous in protecting the civil liberties and constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. And yet, on the other hand, the administration has been less than effective in investigating and going after real-life terrorists. And a concern in particular I have is that your efforts and those of the FBI have been unduly constrained and handcuffed. And I would point to two instances. One, the Fort Hood shooting, where we had with Major Hassan considerable evidence, including his emails with Anwar al-Awlaki, talking about killing other service members. The FBI was aware of that, and yet we failed to stop that terrorist attack. Likewise, with the Boston bombing, we had considerable evidence with the Zarnaf brothers of their affiliation with radical Islamic views, their advocacy of those views. We had reports from Russia, and yet we failed to stop that attack. In your views, why is it that law enforcement was not able to connect the dots with Fort Hood and with Boston and prevent those attacks beforehand? And what policies have changed under the Obama administration concerning the investigation of radical Islamic terrorism?
Well, in neither case, whether it be Fort Hood or in the Boston case, would I say that there were policies that inhibited us from doing our job. I will tell you, in the Fort Hood case, prior to the time of Fort Hood, al-Awlaki was seen as a proselytizer, a radical imam, but was not known to have engaged in operational activities. Consequently, when we looked at emails, we did not look at them through the operational prism. Had we done so, perhaps other steps would have been taken. There were judgment calls that were made in the course of that as to, for instance, whether you interview Hassan, that in retrospect could have gone the other way. But I do not think that there were any constraints, statutory or otherwise, that enabled us or disabled us from doing the job. In the case of Boston, yes, we were alerted by the Russians to Tamerlan's movement towards radicalization, with the expectation from the Russians was that he was being radicalized and would be going back to Russia and to fight with perhaps the Chechens. They alerted to us. They alerted us. They wanted us to do whatever investigation we could and alert Tamerlan when, or alert the Russians when Tamerlan went back to Russia. We did an investigation based on what the Russians gave us. That investigation required going through all of the databases. Went to the university or the college that he attended for a period of time. Interviewed his parents. Interviewed him. Did, I think, a very rational, responsible, and thorough investigation given the information we had. He then goes back to Russia, and when he comes back, what we did not do, which we are going to do in the future, and that is the text alerts that come into the task force have to be identified to a particular person as opposed to just coming into a task force. In any event, there is nothing that constrained our investigation at the outset back in 2011. And in my mind, even if we had done the one or two things that in retrospect we could have done better, I do not think we would have been able to stop that particular attack. But I do not believe we were in any way constrained from doing the investigation that we thought necessary once we had the information.
Thank you.